All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Blake&VishSports. Sports. I'm Blake, joined with Vish. Today's episode, some big news in the NBA world came. So James Harden's on the move to the Nets. Whole landscape of the NBA just changed from that. Before we get into all this, though, Vish, how you doing? It's been about a week since we did our last one. Anything new with you?
Yeah, school started this week. Total change in life.
Yeah.
Just getting back to the grind and stuff. But yeah, the sports world has been going crazy the last 3-4
Yeah,
days
for real.
with the NFL playoffs, the college national championship, the James Harden news.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to get
No,
into. Yeah. So you want to start with the college national championship game? I
Yeah.
know you don't watch a lot of college football during the season just because,
Yeah.
how much football can you watch with school and stuff? But I know that
Mhm.
before the draft, you go back and watch. But I know you watched this game. What were your thoughts? What was your reaction watching this game and watching Alabama secure another national title?
Yeah, so we can just talk about my first takeaway. So I think the main thing that I was keen on was watching Mac Jones. So me and you have kind of preached this, but we haven't watched much of these quarterbacks, and we're kind of waiting more towards the draft to actually sit down and watch multiple games and evaluate them. But from what I've seen of Mac Jones is I'm not thinking he's a guy that I would like to spend a first round pick on. And the main reason is this has happened with multiple Bama quarterbacks. Him and Tua were kind of the actual blue chip prospects coming in dominant, not like the Greg McElroys or AJ McCarrons that were just pure game managers, right? But I don't know. That offense has so much talent on it. Smith, Waddle, their O-line, Najee Harris. And I'm just not the biggest Mac Jones fan. I'm thinking he's more of just a glorified game manager, and I'd be kind of pissed spending a first rounder on him. I don't know. That was my main takeaway from it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, my takeaway from the game was that Bama is just a machine. Like, how many years can they keep doing this? They're amazing. They're nuts. Our man Jamal put it in the comment section. Yeah, Devonta Smith is an all-time great
Yeah.
college receiver. It was like a storybook ending to his phenomenal career at Alabama. But if you want to get into Mac Jones, let's do it. Because I think I'm a little higher on Mac Jones. I don't know if I see him as like a legit top 10 pick or a top 15 pick, but I think he's pretty good. And what I will say is, I don't know if there's that much of a difference in terms of physical talent between him and Tua. So Tua's better than him. Tua's the more talented prospect. Tua had more processing moments and more moments than Mac Jones. But in terms of accuracy, arms, and he also threw with a bit more accuracy and anticipation. But Mac Jones still throws with a ton of accuracy. He anticipates well. He has a pretty strong arm, I would say as strong as Tua, and I don't think Tua was that athletic. And I think Mac Jones is a similar level of athlete. So I don't think he's that far from there. I do agree with you that his ceiling is probably like a tier 3 quarterback or game manager. But I wouldn't mind drafting Mac Jones. He's proven that he can execute a good scheme. And I think on a rookie contract, you could win with Mac Jones. Now, I don't know if you'd be the type of guy you pay a ton of money to just because he doesn't offer much outside of what's the offense offers. But Steve Sarkisian has a really good scheme. And we talk a lot of Niners. So for the Niners case, I actually think Mac Jones, if you trade down twice and take him at the top of the second or at the end of the first round, I think he would be good value.
So, yeah. And to your point, so you mentioned Smith, right? So when you're looking at the 2020 roster, they have Smith, Waddle. Those are both first rounders. Najee Harris, he's like the RB1, RB2, maybe first round. At minimum, he's going to be a second rounder. A bunch of dudes on the O-line that are getting drafted. One of them or a couple of them in the first, second, and then some mid-rounders, right? But that's my thing with him is we're seeing him in just basically a machine of a team, right? Like Bama, they get the top prospects, and I think the best comparison is Rutgers coach Greg Schiano. He said this. So Rutgers obviously doesn't get a lot of talent. They played Ohio State. And the way he put it was, it's like you're playing a team and the other team gets the first 93 picks in the draft at talent. So that's what he put it as, and that's how I view Bama. And their team is loaded. And I think he's kind of similar to Goff in a sense that when you remember their run, right, he needed everyone to be healthy. He needed a really good coach. And when Cooper Kupp got hurt, that offense got a lot worse. And you're thinking to yourself, like, Cooper Kupp's a good receiver and whatnot, but like that shouldn't derail the offense. And so I'm thinking it's a situation like that. I'm interested on your thoughts, though.
I think you're actually being a bit too harsh. Just because, given that, like, the guys that are going high, Trevor Lawrence had a bad offensive line this year, but the years past, I mean, Justin Ross was a 5-star recruit. Travis Etienne is going to be a first-round pick. T. Higgins was a top of the second-round pick who had an excellent rookie season, and they had a really good defense with Isaiah Simmons, A.J. Terrell, the 4 defensive linemen the year they won the national championship in Clelin Ferrell, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, those guys. So I think all these guys that are going to get picked, Justin Fields plays in Ohio State. They all play with really good teams and really good talent. I do agree with you that maybe Mac Jones doesn't project as high as ceiling because he's not as gifted as those guys. But I think the big problem with Jared Goff is that Jared Goff makes too much money. And when Jared Goff was playing like that in 2018, he was on a rookie contract. So my thing with Mac Jones is that it's not that I sit here and say, oh, Mac Jones is going to be a superstar. But I think if, like, let's say the team like a 49ers draft him, already really good scheme, really great weapons. Let's say you take him instead, taking him at 12 is rich. But let's say you take him at the end of the first round at like 28. You trade back twice, you accumulate picks, and you take Mac Jones. I think on a rookie contract, without having to pay him that large second contract, Mac Jones could be a really, really solid pro that you could win with because he's got a good enough arm. He's pretty accurate. He makes all the throws. He can move a little bit. He seems to be, and I mean, he didn't miss a throw on Sunday. So, on Monday. So
really accurate.
Right. And even if the weapons are really good, right? Tua had Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, Henry Ruggs. He had
Ruggs, Jeudy, and other people too.
But the quarterback still got to throw them the ball. And in Mac Jones' case, he threw it very accurately to them. So I agree with you, but I think you're being a tad harsh.
No, I think you bring up a good point with the Niners, and if they did trade back to, say, pick 25, they traded back twice, that I would honestly be on board if that was the result, because my thing is, like, if you're accumulating a couple thirds, maybe at best a second, but like a third and a couple fourths and later round picks, like, you're getting more depth that way and more just like throws at a dartboard pretty much. That's what the middle and later rounds are.
Right.
Mac Jones would be – I think he'd be pretty good in the Niners system, right? If they help patch up the line. My thing is, I don't know, like if my team's drafting a quarterback and his ceiling is like limited to the point that Jones is, I just get worried, and it's kind of a bummer knowing like that he can't become that superstar.
It's fair, but I feel like generally, I mean, even this draft, I think Lawrence, is going to be top 15 quarterback from day one. And I think he's going to project somewhere into the top 8 and be that for his career. Yeah. I think Fields has the ability to be that, but I think Fields also has to go to a place that has the right kind of offense for him. I don't think he's a guy where bad scheme, bad teammates, he's just going to carry everything. But I think he's so physically gifted that if you put him in a good scheme,
the potential to be
right. If you put him in a good scheme, right, he could be that good. So when you look at it like that with those two, I think that generally with quarterbacks, you still need guys like that are going to fit into the middle tier of quarterback. Getting the top 10 guys is so tough. Like getting Justin Herbert as a rookie is nearly impossible, which means that those second tier guys, right, if you can get that guy at 28 and have him on a stacked roster, you can still win with him. And, you know, our friend of the show, Grant Cohn, he has a really, really moneyball philosophy when it comes to quarterbacks. I think his philosophy is too progressive. I don't think the league is ready for that. But his opinion is if you're getting a mid-tier quarterback, you can stack your roster and win with that mid-tier quarterback. And he says, well, just don't pay the mid-tier quarterback. Just draft another one. Just don't pay him the second contract because you can constantly keep stacking your roster and winning with these average quarterbacks with good scheme and until you find the really great one that you pay. I think that's a little too progressive for the NFL, but I'm kind of in line with that thinking when it comes to a guy like Mac Jones. Because to me, you can win with Mac Jones day one. I'm not saying you can put Mac Jones on the Arizona Cardinals with Cliff Kingsbury and have him do what Kyler Murray does, but I'm saying he can do what Jimmy Garoppolo does to an extent on the 49ers, or he can do what Jared Goff does for the Rams, or he can do what Baker Mayfield does. Maybe not as
what they do, right?
Right. It's maybe not as many big time throws as Baker, because Baker can really sling it when he's on. But he'll be cheaper. I think that would be the big thing for him.
And I'm kind of with Grant on that. I'm on that hype train too. After seeing I know the Packers paid Rodgers and everything, but when you look at the teams that win the Super Bowls, it's either been Brady, who's been grossly underpaid, or it's like a quarterback on a rookie deal who's popped off. My only thing with that theory is GMs and coaches, if they miss on that quarterback, they have a short leash. And I think that's sometimes hard for us to see as fans, right? Because we're yeah, we want to get a new quarterback and keep recycling, but the GM's not going to want to do that. They want to have him
right.
They don't want to keep getting fired. And for the the executives and the owners, they could try to instill that, but it's just hard if you're a GM to keep doing that and not be fearful for your job. But in a perfect world where there's no threat, if John Gruden did this, because he has a 10-year deal, or he had a 10-year, he's got 7 years left. If he did that, then I could understand, because he has a really long leash, but most GMs don't have that.
So I actually disagree. I don't think it's the GMs that would have a problem with this, because I think if you're the GMs, because I think you look just as bad if you miss on a quarterback if you pay Jared Goff $35 million. I think that's a bad move still.
Worse.
I think the owners are the ones that would have a problem with it, because the NFL is a business and quarterbacks are kind of the most marketable person on your team. And often fans become super attached to the idea that this guy's your quarterback, and the idea that this guy could become something. And maybe he can't become something. Maybe this is what he is, a pretty good player. But fans become attached to that idea, and letting go of that guy who the coaches and the GMs might be convinced that he's not would be a really hard sell, especially if you have a couple years of a lull where the guy you pick isn't that good. So then you pick another guy. Fans would be really upset, because at least you got rid of the guy who's pretty good over a couple dollars and cents. So
fans that I'm thinking the Browns right now. If they just said don't pay Baker, which it's up for debate, right? However much he wants. But they got him, he brought them a playoff win, and they haven't had that in some people's lifetimes, right?
Right.
So getting rid of that would be a very, very hard sell for the owners, and you would lose fans too. So I think I'm with you. Maybe it's a little too progressive in the sense that it's more of in a perfect world, this is what we would do. But that's just not how the NFL is. There's more factors than just always looking at the long term and trying to build a roster that way.
Right. And I think Baker, just to kind of put a bow on this conversation, I actually think Baker's the perfect example, because Baker Mayfield has played really good football in the second half of this season, and he can really make some big time throws. But ultimately, Baker Mayfield plays in an offense that's built on play action, that's built on bootlegs, that has a lot of well-defined reads that make it easy for him to progress through the field. And you have a Nick Chubb, you have the best offensive line. And what that does is it doesn't make 6-foot Baker Mayfield drop back 35 times a game like Patrick Mahomes and just throw it, or Josh Allen and just throw it every time. So he has certain limitations where, if in this situation, I think you can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield, because I think he throws the ball that well and all of that. But if Baker Mayfield makes $40 million, I think it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So let's say Baker Mayfield gets signed. Instead of going so progressive where you let go of him and draft a quarterback, what if you sign Baker Mayfield for what he's kind of worth? That kind of middle quarterback between
that's hard to do though.
Between he sits probably somewhere between 14 to 18 in the NFL. What if you signed him for $25 million? I think you could win with Baker Mayfield. Right? I think you could do that. I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
I think that's the adjustment that the NFL has to make in terms of their salary cap, where only the Rodgers, the Deshaun Watsons, the Josh Allens, the Russell Wilsons, the Mahomes, those are the only guys that are going to get $40 million. Then make the mid-tier guys fit into a mid-tier salary, because you do it with every other position. Do it with quarterback too, and that's what I would say, and that's why I think a guy like Mac Jones on a rookie salary, you can win with him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Like we've said, we're not great talent evaluators. I was a big Josh Rosen fan, so like
Yeah, I like Rosen
take
too.
whatever I
So.
say with a grain of salt due to that. But I am interested to like actually try and watch these guys like a lot, like watch multiple games and stuff because this is one of the best quarterback classes we've had in quite a while. As far as I know, next year's not really supposed to be all that great.
Yeah.
No, like Trevor Lawrence or Tua or anything like that are super hyped for years. So it's an interesting thing to think about. But I'd imagine Mac Jones goes top 20. And before we move off this, I just thought this was a good question because it kind of tied into the whole NCAA thing. So my RB1 is going to be Najee Harris, and it's majorly because I think he can do anything that you'd want in a running back. He can catch. He's pretty decent at pass blocking. Obviously, a really good runner, pretty good vision. We saw the hurdle. He's super athletic. I think the only other guy you'd say is Travis Etienne, and my main thing with him is pass protection, and it's pretty underrated. And it goes under the radar for like evaluating running backs, mainly due to the fact that like when you're watching college football, you're not really just like thinking like, oh, he made a good block there. It's more of like, wow, this dude's got the most rushing yards in Clemson history. Like he's a beast. So that's my take. I'm interested to hear yours, Vish.
So it's funny. I feel like we're right on the same wavelength because before we went to our next planned topic, I also wanted to hit this question because I think it's super interesting. And so I know how good Najee Harris is. He looks really special as a receiver, as a runner. He's elusive, but he's so big, so strong. He's fast. He's explosive. He's got everything you want. But I've watched a lot of Clemson over the last few years, and I'm attached to Travis Etienne. I think he's going to be a superstar. He's so explosive. He's so fast. He's a great receiver. He's got great balance. He's a strong runner. So for me, Travis Etienne is the best running back in the draft. I'm going to probably stand by that just because I felt so strongly about that for so long. Yeah. I think the second part of this question is what's interesting. And I have a really interesting philosophy when it comes to running backs, and I want to run it by you, okay? I think we've had this conversation, but not in depth before.
Yeah.
So my thing with running backs is I'm not full analytics, okay? Analytics say don't draft running backs high because you can match their value, and don't pay running backs a second contract. I fall somewhere in between. I say draft running backs high. Just don't pay them a second contract.
How high though? Like first round?
As high as you want.
10?
Because look, the top 10 too. Because if you're drafting a running back top 10, you're usually getting a special player like a Todd Gurley, a Zeke Elliott. The average lifespan for an NFL player, whether you draft an offensive tackle or whether you draft a running back, is about 3 years. The thing with these special running backs is usually you're guaranteed 5 years of elite production before their bodies start to fall off. So what I usually say is draft a guy really high because the learning curve isn't that steep for running backs.
Yeah, it's like
if you pick Dalvin Cook, let's say you pick Dalvin Cook 10th overall, you can win with Dalvin Cook running the ball because he's going to be more effective regardless of what the analytics say. There's moments and specific runs at specific times that Dalvin Cook is going to be more effective than the undrafted guy running in a great scheme. Dalvin Cook in a great scheme is more effective. And you can win with that for 4 to 5 years. Where I would caution and say don't do it is don't give him the second contract. But I think drafting a running back high, I'm all for it because I think running back can be valuable in the right offenses. And I think if you have a really good running back that you draft high, like Zeke Elliott, right off the bat, he was dominant for the Dallas Cowboys. And Dak Prescott was phenomenal, but Zeke Elliott was really the driving force of their offense. Now they paid him. He slowed down, and he's probably not worth the money they give him. But he wasn't a bust at 4th overall. He's a phenomenal pick. So that's what do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm with you on the don't give them a second contract. But I will say a caveat to that is unless they haven't got a ton of carries early on, Derrick Henry, for example, he was in an RBBC, so running back by committee with DeMarco Murray. For the first couple of years of his contract, he was taken in the second round, so he had 2 years of like pretty good production, and then they paid him. I'm cool with that. They didn't run him into the ground. Prime examples of being run into the ground: Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, who am I?
Zeke Elliott.
Zeke, yeah. So like those guys, they were getting fed tons and tons of carries. Then they signed these longer deals, and David Johnson too. And now their bodies are breaking down, and that's what happens when you feed someone 300 times a year, and they're getting like playing in a football game, just like being in multiple car crashes, right? Like you just can't expect to have that happen for 6 years and be effective. Where I slightly disagree with you is I'm not interested in taking a running back in the first round. I mean, I think we've seen time and time again, most of the time, I would not say it's worth it. I'd say Zeke, you could argue his rookie contract was worth it, but paying him. But would I rather take an elite offensive tackle at number 4 or an elite corner? Like they had the opportunity for Jalen Ramsey, right? Like say they took an elite prospect at one of those positions, you're comfortable signing him for multiple years. Do you want to take a guy top 10 that you don't plan on re-signing after the first 5 years of his contract? That's where I struggle with it. I'm fine with second round occasionally, like if you have a really good O-line or you need that position desperately. But my main philosophy is taking them in the later round, mid to later rounds, maybe one every year. Like if you trade down and pick up an additional fourth, you take a running back there that you think's good, and just keep stacking on the running backs. And I think running back by committee is probably the best way to do it. You look at teams that have won Super Bowls, like the Chiefs didn't really have a great running back last year. They were by committee. The Eagles, Jay Ajayi, Jordan Howard, Corey Clement, the Patriots, 6 times, right? I think running back by committee is the move. I'm pretty far against paying running backs unless there's like they haven't gotten too many carries early on. Interested to see what you think of that.
Yeah, so in theory, I do agree. I think Zeke Elliott is a little bit of a tough example just because he was in a draft where Ronnie Stanley, Jalen Ramsey,
that was kind of a bad example. There's like
DeForest Buckner went after him. So like he doesn't match up in terms of premium of position. But where I would say is like if you're picking 15, right? And there's a running back, like let's say teams view Najee Harris as Adrian Peterson, okay? Mm-hmm. And teams aren't picking him because of the value of the position. If you're picking 15 and you don't really like the corners that are on the board, you don't like the tackles that are on the board, you don't like the quarterbacks that are on the board, you don't like the edge rushers on the board, take him if he's the best player available. Because what happens is you have 5 years of full control of his rights, right? You have the 4 years and then the 5th-year option, and you can get 5 years of elite production rather than getting a guy that you might not have as one of your top guys and getting 2 years of no production and he busts, or 4 years of mediocre production. At least get 5 years of elite production from that player. So that's where I stand. I'm totally with you, though. No second contract for them.
Do you think, what about the thing where, like the Derrick Henry situation, where if the player doesn't have a lot of carries or touches in his first few years, then maybe you hand out like a short term? I'd say
I feel like Derrick Henry. Go ahead, my bad.
I was going to say, like, if you're doing a second contract, I think if it's like 2 years at most, maybe 3, and there's like a team option in that 3rd year, then you could argue for it. And it also depends on guarantees too. Like we haven't gotten into that detail either. Like we could talk about the Zeke contract, and one thing that I don't think a lot of people know. So it's like a 7-year contract, right?
It's six.
So they have an out after 2023, and basically like they can cut him for like $2 million dead cap at the end of 2023, which I mean I'd imagine they do, right?
We'll see. Maybe he bounces back. Back. The thing with Derrick Henry, though, is I feel like he's more the anomaly rather than the example. He had a ton of carries in high school, a ton of carries in Alabama. But for whatever reason, even though he runs super upright, and he just doesn't really – for a big guy, actually, he's not just this power runner bruiser like Brandon Jacobs. His vision and speed is what's really special. And he does it from size, and then he has that mean stiff arm. I don't know, though, honestly. I think Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, we'll see how his contract works.
So far,
Alvin Kamara,
right?
Right. Alvin Kamara, who's been was excellent this year. We'll see how that works out. Dalvin Cook, who also had a phenomenal year. We'll see how that works out. I think ultimately my opinion on running backs, and I think we both can say the same thing. We're both really flexible when it comes to having an opinion when it comes to these running backs, just because I feel like there's a lot more variables. And maybe the league will do some sort of thing to make sure that running backs aren't just getting shafted in terms of how their contracts are structured or whether they're getting paid or not.
And 2 more things before we stop talking about this. I know we kind of went off topic, but it was a good question. What may be tainting us is like seeing Saquon go second. He hasn't really helped them, and everyone's like, oh, it's because their O-line's so bad. It's like, why don't you just take O-line? Because it seems like Wayne Gallman, although nowhere near as good as Barkley, he's still like putting up over 4 yards a carry. And then also Leonard Fournette, like you think they're a sure thing because they can transition pretty easily. And Fournette did really good his first couple of years, right? And now he's kind of fizzled out. He's on the Bucs. So it's not like they're guaranteed to hit, although the hit rate for running backs is significantly higher than like pretty much any other position, I'd say. And then one more thing is AP's contract is kind of also an anomaly. Like he signed a huge contract.
Right.
And the
He
man
was worth every penny.
Running back, which is like in this day and age unheard of. I don't know if it'll be a while before that happens again, I'd imagine.
Yeah, he was definitely worth every penny. So
Yeah.
he's kind of an anomaly. And then real quick on the Saquon thing, I think the thing that Leonard Fournette, I agree. I don't think it was really a wasted pick because I don't think they make the AFC Championship that first year because their offense was all Leonard Fournette. And number two, with Saquon, I think the thing with Saquon that people really missed because he was such a physical freak was that he wasn't this special in between the tackle runner where it's like Zeke Elliott or Todd Gurley where you can run him 25 times and he's going to wear a defense and carry your offense. He was this special athlete, but you also have to you couldn't just use him by turning around and heading him off the ball. You got to use him in the screen game. You got to use him as a receiver. Right. He's got to be used like a McCaffrey or a Kamara, and he hasn't been given that opportunity.
That's fair. Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess we can move on. We kind of spent a pretty good while on that, but it was a really good question. Next, so as people know who have watched our videos, we're pretty big Lamar stans. We're not big fans of the hate. And so Vish, he came out with the dub against the Titans. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't even call, like, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I wouldn't even call myself like a Lamar stan, if you will. I like Lamar Jackson fine. I just think the narrative that surrounds him is stupid. Like, he's 23 years old and people are acting like he's totally choked in life. And it's crazy to me, like, that he won, like, what, 6 big games in a row to get them into the playoffs, and nobody was giving him credit because they said he's got to do it in the playoffs. And now he does great in the playoffs, and I still feel like people are waiting on him. Well, he's got to do it against the Chiefs. I thought he was phenomenal against the Tennessee Titans. Like, I thought he literally
awesome.
Their offense, like, everybody wants to bring up the pass game, 165 yards, blah, blah, blah. They don't have a good pass game scheme, and they don't have good wide receivers. They just don't. Like, those receivers can't win on the outside. So I just think that it's unfair to evaluate him that way. His running is special. His running is the reason they won that game. He's so explosive. He's so fast. And, I think we're going to get into it with them against Buffalo, but I think they actually match up really well with Buffalo. It's a favorable matchup to me for them. And I think he's going to have another great game.
Yeah. So on that game, the touchdown run was actually just one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a playoff game. He was in the pocket. Their offense was pretty anemic to that point. Like, they weren't really getting much, and he just took off, right? And their pass rush is, we've talked about it before, they don't have a good pass rush at all. They have Jeffrey Simmons on their D-line. Harold Landry's all right, but besides that,
yeah, right. Tennessee does
a bunch of like people that will probably not be there next year, or not starters at least. And they were, pretty containing him pretty well. In that one little play, someone pursued over the left tackle. I think it was Landry. I'm not sure. But he just took off, right? He saw a lane, got past a couple guys, and the dude's fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome. And then I think we saw in the second half, his passing really picked it up. That first interception he had, like, that was a pretty bad pass. No need to really say much more on that. But, his passing in the second half was good enough. And then once they started feeding Dobbins and their O-line was getting a push on the line, they started playing really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers it. Like, he basically carries their offense with his run. And I love that you brought up the touchdown run because he was shot from a cannon. Yeah. I think the big thing with the Titans defense is, like, I don't really want to say anything critical because I'm like a closeted Tennessee guy where I like Ryan Tannehill. I like Corey Davis. I like A.J. Brown. I like Derrick Henry. I like Vrabel. So I don't like saying anything bad about them, but they're not fast on defense to go with the fact that they can't rush the passer. So Lamar was way too dynamic. I think last year 2 things helped them. 1, they jumped out in front like this year, and 2, I think the loss of Dean Pease hurt them. Dean Pease was super creative on third downs, and he did a lot of things that would cover up the fact that they didn't have top-notch personnel. They had pretty good personnel, and they just lack speed on their defense. Their linebackers, Jen Brown, Rashaan Evans, those guys aren't too fast. Long isn't too fast. Their defensive line isn't particularly fast. Their safeties, corners, I mean, besides Adoree Jackson, there's not a lot of speed out there. They're kind of slow as a defense, and I think Dean Pease was super creative in how they played zone coverage and stuff and was able to do those things. But Lamar is just different this year. And their defense, the Ravens' defense, also played phenomenal. But I think this game was all about Lamar, and people need to stop disrespecting Lamar Jackson because he's going to win a lot more playoff games in his career. This was a first playoff game of many, and I don't want to hear anything about the choking. Like, that choking bothers me more because he's like 23, 2 years older than me. Like, imagine if one of us was 2 years into our profession. We've barely done anything in our profession. We've had some success, and people are saying that we're chokers, like, or we can't execute when it counts. Like, that narrative was mind-blowing to me from day one, and I'm glad that Lamar can finally put a playoff win on his resume, where there's also something where you can tell people who have that bogus mindset that it's a waste of time and it's wrong.
Yeah, and it's not that the fact that, like, we say big game, right? And then he starts, he won a do or die game his rookie year. This year, this year, that Browns game was spectacular. Me and you really didn't think they'd make it because they would have pretty much had to do what they did and win out. And they did win out. Each of those games was do or die. Like, if they lose those games, right, they're one of those. I don't know. They maybe could have lost one due to the other loss, but like, he played out of his mind. My other thing too is what was I going to say? Yeah, I think it's mainly due to just young quarterbacks being more successful now. You see the Herberts, the Burrows, the Mahomes, and they all win stuff when they're really young, and then they say, Lamar, why can't you do that? It's like, it's a completely different situation. We've talked about their pass offense and how they really don't have any, like, viable number one options. Like, Mark Andrews is probably their best weapon, and he's a really good tight end, but that's not the guy you want to focus your pass offense around. So I'm happy it's over. I was so happy when they won. I'm not even a Ravens fan, but I just hate the narrative.
Me too. And I think ultimately the point you made was right on about the young quarterbacks. I think people see the success Mahomes has had.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's been expected on Watson as much, but for some reason Lamar Jackson has taken the brunt of it. But Mahomes also has played in the best possible situation. He is the best of the quarterbacks. That's one thing. And number two, he's played in the best situation of the quarterbacks. Football's a team game. Last year against Tennessee, Lamar Jackson, he had a couple turnovers, but the Ravens as a team played poorly. How can he take blame for that? So I think it's too much when they win, give credit to the quarterback. When they lose, blame the quarterback. Lamar Jackson, I can't wait. I hope they make it to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Cool. Right. And it's not even because I like Baltimore or I'm a big Baltimore fan. I just want to see this narrative gone.
Yeah. And I think it's mainly due to expectation. Like, they went 14-2. He won the MVP. Like, you're expected to perform well, and rightfully so. I think he threw 50 or 60 passes last year against Tennessee. And I mean, that's just not a winning formula for a quarterback with Marquise Brown as the number one receiver. Like, no disrespect to him, but he's not the best number one receiver, right? I think it was expectation. And, it's kind of with Giannis too, like winning an MVP, like, you're expected to perform well in the playoffs. And if you even slip up like the tiniest margin, people are just going to
give you no context or give you no room. It's just, you're bad.
Yeah.
So Greg in the chat asked, did I miss the NBA talk? No, you didn't. But if you want to go there, let's talk James Harden, because James Harden's comments were polarizing when he basically told the media he doesn't want to be in Houston yesterday. They got the deal done today. It was picking up steam, and they got it done. I think, Blake, you have the full details on the trade if you want to go over that. And then the other interesting angle is the whole Kyrie Irving thing. We're going to get into all of that right now. So, Blake, you want to break down the James Harden trade? What were your initial thoughts? How do you think the Nets are going to do?
So I'll give you guys just like the whole trade, because there was 4 different teams involved. So we'll start with the Rockets. So they got Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs. I butchered the name. Sorry, I haven't heard of him. So they got 3 Brooklyn first rounders in 2022, 24, and 26. 1 Milwaukee first rounder, unprotected in 22, and then 4 Brooklyn first round swaps. So this basically means like if the Rockets were picking 25 and the Nets were picking 15, like they could switch those. They have the option, but they are not required to. They have 4 of those. That's the Rockets. The Nets got James Harden. The Pacers got Karis LeVert and a second rounder from somewhere. The Cavs got Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. So that's just everything there was. Do you want to go team by team?
Yeah, let's go team by team. Let's start with the Nets.
Yeah.
So here's my take. I thought that was phenomenal. I think the first thing James Harden needs to do is he needs to go find the nearest treadmill in Brooklyn and start losing the 15 pounds that he put on and getting in championship shape, because they're going to be deep in the playoffs. And I know people are getting into this, oh, they're disgruntled, blah, blah, blah. James Harden has never played with really anybody where he can throw the ball to them and they're going to go get a bucket.
And they're just as good as him, if not better.
Right. He had Chris Paul. He had Chris Paul for 1 year.
Chris Paul was really good.
Healthy, and guess what? They were one Chris Paul injury from going to the finals. So I think the James Harden slander is often overblown, and I think this is a good chance for him to show the other styles of basketball that he can play. Because I think one of the most underrated things about him is that he's one of the best passers in the NBA, especially in the pick and roll. So I think that if they have to move Kyrie Irving, or Kyrie Irving wants to take another large leave of absence, James Harden can play point guard for them. They can run the pick and roll, and James Harden's going to be super slick and dish out 15 assists in his sleep, and it can be like that. Number 2, I think him and KD are actually a really, really nice fit next to each other, because I think that James Harden, for the most part, with the Rockets, what happened was they would just spread the floor and they would say, James, you got to just boogie on people. So you would have to do this in between the legs set up, get his change of pace dribble, and then he either goes around the guy and sets somebody else up, hits the floater, or steps back from 3. He doesn't have to do that anymore. He can be really efficient because he knows that he can throw the ball to the 7-foot guy on the other side who in 2 dribbles can take a mid-range jumper and drill it. And in 15 shots, he can score 35 points. So I think it's a really good fit that way. And I think the biggest thing for Brooklyn is they have to integrate a huge piece like James Harden mid-season. I think that's going to be their biggest question, because talent-wise, I don't think anybody's going to really compete in the East. And, people bring up defense, but I think they have enough people in their roster that can defend. And I think James Harden can also defend in spots. And I think the fact that they're going to be so difficult to stop on offense, maybe Philly with Joel Embiid gives them a little bit more trouble. Giannis probably gives them a little bit more trouble, and Milwaukee can defend straight across. But ultimately, nobody's stopping those 3 guys, and they can defend in any type of way. So I think that the Nets are now headed, I would say, for a collision course with the Lakers. And I'm really interested to see how that turns out.
Yeah, so you brought up some good points. I'm going to go a little sideways from you on this. So my only few things that I'm just kind of dying to see is, how is this bench unit going to be for the Nets? So
they got Bruce Brown, former Piston.
They do. And hopefully he gets big minutes, because that man, if you guys watch the Jordan documentary, a lot of NBA takes came after that. And Bruce Brown, formerly Piston, now on the Nets, stated that he's going to instill the Jordan mentality into the Pistons locker room. He's on the Nets now, so I'm assuming KD, Harden, and Kyrie, if they didn't have killer instinct and taking everything personally, they will have it now. And that's,
So just a little bit of context to that. The reason we know this is because I'm a big Pistons fan, and one time I was just scrolling through Pistons Twitter, and I saw that Bruce Brown said that he wanted to incorporate Jordan's leadership into his own. Very noble thought, except Bruce Brown was a solid role player for the Pistons who had potential because he played hard and he played good defense. And instilling Jordan's kind of Napoleon dictatorship type seemed a little insane for somebody who's not a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant. So I just thought we used to joke about this, and now that the Nets have them, we just feel like they're going to have that killer instinct. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Blake.
Not to get too off topic, but when you look at the beginning of the season, the pieces they had on the bench, they had LeVert, they had Jared Allen, they had Dinwiddie. All 3 of those guys are gone. DeAndre Jordan's starting at center, and he's been a little lackluster this year, not the best. So that worries me. Like, who's going to fill that backup center role? I'm sure they could get like a ring chaser who's like a decent enough role player to help cover some of those minutes. So I'm not too worried on that end. But yeah, that bench is going to be interesting because I think we've seen playoff teams usually like deep into the playoffs, they have to have at least 7, usually 8 guys that can actually come on the floor and not be complete liabilities. And it's interesting to see if they have that. And my other thing is Kyrie is going to be the third option, which is I never imagined we'd ever say that after seeing what he did on the Cavs. And I'm interested to see how he takes it because he's obviously a very ball-dominant player. And I know KD can play off ball. We know James Harden can play off ball. But those dudes are also debatably top 5 ISO scorers. So, like,
all time, maybe.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they integrate 3 ISO scores. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Steve Nash isn't like he's a coach. He's literally an NBA coach. He's an NBA legend. Like these dudes, like that's what they're living and breathing, and like they'll figure it out somehow, right? By the time they get to the playoffs, hopefully, that's the thought. But yeah, the chemistry is going to be interesting. And do you want to talk about the Kyrie like antics before we move off of the Nets?
Real quick, before we go to Kyrie, because I do want to hit that, there's one thing I did want to mention in regards to what you said. So I think one thing that has to happen is that I think James Harden is going to have to be the guy that no longer scores 35 because I think he's the guy that can run the offense the best out of the 3. So I think James Harden's going to have to play like a point guard, and he's going to average like maybe 20, 25, and he's going to have to average 8 to 10 assists and really get people involved and play that style. And he's really capable of playing that style.
He can.
Yeah, he can do it. He's just going to have to be willing to do that. And then because you can go to Kyrie and Kyrie can go off and go berserk and do Kyrie things. And KD, obviously, he just needs 15 shots to score 35 casually. He's that good. And then the other thing is I think their bench isn't that bad. Because when you have those 3, you have 3 primary ball handlers who can run your offense at any point on the floor. So I don't think they would ever play in the 48 minutes without at least 2.
Well, they would input the other dudes. Like you need at least 7 dudes on your team.
I think Jeff Green pretty solid. Okay, I think Jeff Green works out for them enough to be okay. I think Luau Cabarro shoots the ball pretty well, 38% shooter from 3. He can play a bit. Bruce Brown, as much as, we joke with Bruce Brown, former Piston, I still wish he was a Piston. He was a solid defender. He played hard. He's a solid defender. He's going to play hard. And then the fourth guy that I think is going to really make the impact, one second, I'm blanking on his name. Let me get him from the roster. I apologize. Is Landry Shamet. So I think if they had Dinwiddie, this would be totally elite. Dinwiddie's injury hurts a little bit. But I think Landry Shamet is not a very good defensive player, but he can come off screens, he can shoot the 3, and he's aggressive and he's willing to shoot the ball. And I think he would be a really good piece. And then you go to the fact that I think Joe Harris, I'm not sure if he would start with this lineup. Maybe he would for the floor spacing, but Joe Harris, I think, is more than a shooter. I think Joe Harris also at this point has evolved his game to the point where he can take it in and lay the ball up if you start closing out on him hard, where maybe Joe Harris comes off the bench and is a big player off the bench. Yeah, so I think that could be a possibility. But I think there's enough there where there's a championship formula and championship pieces. It's just about them getting reps and playing together, which brings us to the guy who's not playing, Kyrie Irving.
I just want to respond real quickly. So you named a bunch of guys off the bench who will probably get minutes and have an impact. But how many power forwards and centers did you say? There's not many, right?
Okay.
What if they get in foul trouble? They're gonna start KD at the 5. Someone's got to play those minutes.
Let me throw out one theory, okay? Before we go, and before you go, real quick, one theory, okay? So we have another friend who also brought this up, but I've been talking about this just in texting with my friends and stuff about this trade, texting with a bunch of random friends and stuff. Here's the thing with this. I think what's going to happen, or what could happen, the only thing is this guy's age, and this happening would be a little unprecedented. So the Cleveland Cavaliers got Jared Allen. I'm assuming they got Jared Allen because they think he's going to be part of their young core with Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, and Kevin Porter here, Larry Nance. So I think Jared Allen's going to be there. Andre Drummond's making $27 million, and he's on his last year of his contract. I think Andre Drummond's going to get moved during this trade deadline, and I think what's going to happen is that he's going to get traded to some bad team who's going to immediately cut him and because they can take the salary. And players at Andre Drummond's age usually don't get signed, but if he wants to go to the Nets and go for the league minimum, I think that's the one guy they could get for their bench as the center.
That would be a great pickup. My thing is it hasn't. I'll wait to see what they do because they have to address it somehow. You can't go in with just your biggest dude being DeAndre Jordan and that's it. Like that's just simply like they'll pick up someone, right? But it's interesting to like think about like because that is a serious concern. If DeAndre Jordan gets in foul trouble tomorrow, if I don't know if they play, but let's say tomorrow, like who's playing the 5?
Who's guarding Giannis? Who's guarding Embiid? Yeah.
Yeah, but now we can move on to Kyrie. That was a long talk. I mean, it was a huge blockbuster trade. We're only on the first team still, but this whole Kyrie thing, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's nuts. That's all I think. I think it's crazy. I hope Kyrie Irving is doing okay because it is people. I think the thing people keep missing on it is he says there's personal reasons. So maybe there's something going on there that we haven't been privy to. So I always want to give him the benefit of the doubt. Kyrie Irving is obviously a very different person from the usual NBA athlete. He has a different world perspective. He just has a different take. He has a different life perspective. So I hope whatever he needs, he gets it done and comes back to play basketball. And because I think that because him getting in and out and being a story like this, as much as he hates the media, it's their job to make this a story. And this being a story, as you said, is a distraction. And then the other thing is I just like watching, selfishly, I like watching Kyrie Irving play basketball. He's really good at it, and he's really great to watch. So I'm hoping that he comes back and he's mentally in the right state because I think that this could be like 3 of the best offensive players ever in terms of an ISO and skill set from an ISO and skill set standpoint playing together.
Yeah, so I have a couple things. So the first one is kind of to your point as a negative. So there was this quote saying one of his friends thought he would be a guy to retire early. And like he's at that age where he's been in the league for like 9 or 10 years, I think 9 or 10. But so there's that story. 9, okay. So there's that storyline. But I'm not buying like that stuff. My thing is I think it's something to do with COVID, and I'm going to give the dude the benefit of the doubt. Like, we're in unprecedented times. I know that's been hitting the nail on the head by literally every company and every person, but it is true. We saw Karl Anthony Towns. He's had family members pass. Other NBA guys have passed. My thing is like maybe he knows someone close to him has had COVID and they're maybe not doing the best. So there's that. And there was another thing that I read he was on something with social justice, like during one of the games. So maybe he wants to focus more on that. And, he has a huge platform. He's made tons of money. Like, go do what you want to do. Like, as much as I would love to watch this team play, because it's one of the most interestingly constructed teams, I think, ever. 3 top 10 players. If you say Kyrie's 10 or top 10, you could argue it. But yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he'll be back. I do think it's bad for the synergy of the team and chemistry because this whole group hasn't played together very long, and now they're in a huge piece. So hopefully he comes back because that would help. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Yeah, I think both of us are just kind of sympathetic at this point. I mean, because I'm hoping it's not the kind of story that people just have to come and kill him about. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So you want to start getting into the other teams in the nitty-gritty of this trade? Because I think the team that actually made underrated, maybe the second best move besides the Nets, who got the best player by far in this trade for something less than what I expected, honestly, to get a guy like James Harden, was the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they have a really good core. I think Colin Sexton is very close to being an all-star level player. I really like Darius Garland. And I thought getting Jared Allen was a fantastic move. Taurean Prince is really solid for them. And I think that it was a really underrated move. And it really gives them a bunch of young players who can be really good. So what do you think of the Cleveland Cavaliers? Because I really liked the move they made.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jared Allen. Watching him in the bubble last year and other games, like the dude racks up rebounds. That Trailblazers game was an all-time classic. I don't know if you watched it, but it was just back and forth, and Jared Allen was just babying Nurkic, and he was in the glass.
Was it the Karis LeVert 50
yeah.
ball? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember.
So,
yes.
I'm a big fan of Jared Allen. He's a young guy, pretty good on the glass, pretty decent at shot blocking, maybe a little undersized, like a good rim runner. He's just like a net positive to your team, and he adds to a young core, which has been promising in Cleveland. As Tristan Thompson once said, the East runs through us. Said that when he was a Cavalier after they won and lost LeBron and Kyrie. But hey, maybe it'll run through them soon. That's my thing. I'm a fan of Jared Allen, so I like this for them.
Yeah, I think, yeah. And then the other couple teams, right? The Indiana Pacers, then immediately flipping Victor Oladipo for Karis LeVert. You know, Victor Oladipo hasn't been the same since he ruptured his quad, super serious injury. One of the injuries, by the way, just to make a football reference, and given that Niners fans we mostly interact with them, one of the two major injuries Weston Richburg has had. So it's a super serious injury, and Victor Oladipo has not been the same since then. I think Karis LeVert is a really solid player. I don't think he was a fit with the Nets. I think people overrated how much they needed him, just because I don't think his game really fit with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, because he's a dribble. Right, he's a dribble mid-range scorer, and he scores from in between. He has a knack to score kind of these short jump shots. That's his game. And they don't really need him to do that because they can get their own. They just need guys to be able to knock down spot up threes and do stuff like that. And that's not his game. Maybe he was a bit more important since they lost Dinwiddie, but I think he's going to be awesome next to Malcolm Brogdon with Miles Turner and Domantas Sabonis. I think the Pacers have been underratedly very good so far at the start of this year. And I think the add of Karis LeVert is going to make them even better. And they're going to be a team to watch. And then just another detail before you go. My bad, I'm talking a lot right now, but Bobby Marks tweeted out that now the Indiana Pacers are no longer in the luxury tax by trading Victor Oladipo for Karis LeVert. So another good ad that way too.
Yeah, so with Karis LeVert, I'm with you, especially if they had those three scores. What he did offer them was like a bench guy who can get his own scoring, and I think that you need that on a team. Like he's definitely better than Sean Livingston, but I think of like the Warriors with Sean Livingston, and that dude would just come in, back someone down, and just hit a like fadeaway mid-range, and like having a bench score is just huge. But his fit on the Pacers is going to be awesome. Him as a shooting guard, he's a lot younger than Oladipo. He actually wants to be there. Like Oladipo did not want to be in Indiana. I've heard storylines, and I don't know how much truth there is, but he would tell like teams like to come get him and like, I want to play for you, like in front of his Pacer teammates. And he'd say it in like a serious tone. I don't know if like the truth to those rumors or like, yeah, basically like the truth to them, but there was that. And then, LeVert's a solid signing. And I did want to shout out. Yesterday, me and Nolan, he's been on the channel, but we did a video ranking the top 5 duos where both guys are under the age of 25. On my list was Sabonis and Miles Turner. They were number 4, but do check out that video because that's a really good one, ranking duos. Vish has seen it. He was a fan of, I think, most of the stuff. We shouted out the Celtics, Knicks, and a couple other teams.
And the Hawks.
Yeah, Hawks. So a lot of
the Magics, Memphis Grizzlies, just a lot of good teams.
Yeah, do check that out. And then we just posted a betting guide too. So if you're into sports betting and want to hear what we have to say, we did pretty bad last week, had some bad beats, but we're back this week. Not to get too sidetracked. Now let's talk about the team that I think this was super interesting for them, and that's the Rockets. So what are your thoughts? If you want me, I can remind you like what all they got because it was a ton of stuff, right?
So I actually kind of got it in here what they got, right? So they got a bunch of picks, which they didn't have because they traded all their picks between Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook. So they basically reaccumulated all of that. And then the other thing they got was Oladipo. And, I'm actually intrigued by if they keep PJ Tucker. I'm intrigued with John Wall, Victor Oladipo, PJ Tucker, Eric Gordon, Christian Wood. I'm really intrigued. Boogie Cousins. I'm interested to what they can do. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs in the West, but I think if those guys find the right balance and they play hard, I think they got a chance to maybe get near the play-in tournament as like a 10 seed or a 9 seed in the West. But overall, I thought it was a good move. It was the right move. Maybe they could have gotten more for James Harden, but he kind of tanked his own value by making it as publicly clear as possible. And he was becoming too
Now,
toxic. Right. He was becoming toxic for their team and their teammates. But yeah, I overall liked it.
yeah, and my thing with them is they have picks in 2027. I'm not gonna say that this is gonna be like the Nets Celtics trade because those dudes were in their mid 30s and like they were clearly declining, right? But these guys are still like in their 30s. Do you think they're gonna be good in 6 years from now? Like still performing at this level? Probably not. They'd have to go through a rebuild of some sort, right? At least that's what one would think. So I'm really thinking I like this for the Rockets, especially because James Harden wanted to leave. So considering the haul they got, I don't know how great Victor Oladipo is anymore, and he's pretty expensive. I think his contract expires soon though, so like that could be good. I know their owner isn't the most willing to go into the luxury tax as some others like the Warriors, but I'm fine with it for them. And yeah, to your point, like they're going to be interesting to watch. Like they have a lot of dudes that have big names like Wall, Oladipo,
Gordon, Cousins.
Yeah, tons of dudes, and they have some good vets. So I'm interested to see what they do. They're kind of mocking or going after the Thunder and just getting a blockload of first. So, they could – it'll be a while till they're probably relevant again in the playoffs and whatnot. But, they could be good down the line just considering what they recouped from the failure to win a championship, although that 2018 run was special.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I'm fine with what they did. And that's all I have. Do you have any other thoughts on this trade before we go?
I feel like we spent a lot of time, but I think down just about every angle of it to the best of our ability. And, it's unfortunate that he never won in Houston and he only won one MVP. I thought he deserved more than one. But I think James Harden ultimately had a phenomenal career in Houston. And I hope he wins a ring just so that he doesn't become one of the great players who didn't win a ring. I just hope they get that ring. So then you can solidify him as a top 25 type player all time.
Yeah, and I know you are. I am too. I'm big on the James Harden hype train. I love watching him. I think some of the hate's unfair. At times I can understand it because he has underwhelmed in moments in the playoffs, but some of his runs, like mainly 2018 for me, was where blaming him in any sort of way is just dumb. I think they overachieved considering they went up 3-2 on Bailey, the most loaded roster ever. I will always remember that team. And they're a pleasure to watch. James had a good run in Houston, but it's over now.
Yeah, and the other thing with Harden is I get the fouling stuff. I get the traveling stuff that people get upset about it, but I think there's a beauty to his game that people don't appreciate in his ability to get the step back off. Like a lot of people try that same move and get called for a travel. He has such mastery of the gather step and how to use it. His footwork in the lane is so precise. He's never out of control taking charges. He glides to the rim. His change of pace dribble, nobody still can figure it out. He's fantastic. And maybe he'll get appreciated as much as I guess we like him one day. Maybe we over-appreciate him, but yeah.
And so we're going to transition back to the NFL. This episode's been a little longer than we anticipated, but we had some good questions. And, I mean, this trade is astronomical, just in changing the landscape of the NBA. So we can get into the first game that's going to occur. It's going to be my Green Bay Packers versus Vish's rival Rams. He's a Niners fan. I think you all know that. But what are your thoughts when this game came up? And who do you think is going to win? I guess we get to that at the end.
Yeah, I can say right off the bat, I fully expect the Green Bay Packers to win this game, and it's because of one reason and one reason only. They have Aaron Rodgers, and the Los Angeles Rams have John Wolford or Jared Goff. But on paper, actually, I think this matchup actually favors the Los Angeles Rams. Look, the Green Bay Packers are playing better football on defense and
they have in a long time.
But from a talent perspective, it's not that much better. It's just that Rodgers is more comfortable with LaFleur. LaFleur is calling a great game. It feels like they're calling a lot more stuff from 2016, what Kyle Shanahan was running. They're throwing the ball down the field, and Rodgers is just locked in, and Devontae Adams is playing out of his mind. But on paper, the Rams match up. Look, the Green Bay Packers, though their defense has had moments of playing a lot better, they're still small up front with their defensive line. Their linebackers still aren't great. Their secondary, I still think Darnell Savage can be picked on. I think he does a couple things well, but I think he gets lost certain times in coverage, playing certain roles. I think he can be picked on. And I still think they can be had running the football. I think McVay's a lot more creative than Arthur Smith, who has 2-3 runs only, and Derrick Henry is so good at executing them. And I think they could run the ball with Cam Akers. So on paper, that's an advantage for the Rams. Their big problem is that Goff is their quarterback. He's super underwhelming. Wolford's a backup, though, pretty athletic and seems to be a guy that McVay likes. And then on defense, the Packers offense should technically struggle versus Rams defense. If Aaron Donald plays without David Bakhtiari, I think they're going to struggle to block those four. Brandon Staley is super creative. And what the Rams can do is the Rams' big thing is that they can stop the run by playing a split safety alignment, which is hard to do in the NFL. But the Rams do it really well. And what they could do is they could just lock Ramsey on one side. It doesn't have to be on Devontae Adams, just because you don't need to give Ramsey safety help for anybody. So you could lock him, even if it's Marquez Valdez-Scantling, you could just lock him on that side and then play zone everywhere else. And if you're rushing 4 and you can get pressure with 4 and you're dropping 7 where one guy takes away an entire half of the field, basically you have 6 guys kind of scrunched up in a small area trying to affect their pass game. So I think on paper, the Rams got a really good chance with this matchup. I just think the Packers will win because they have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, so one of the comments is Ramsey versus Adams, and this is my thing that I just really want to watch because we've seen Ramsey shut down DK. We've seen him shut down Hopkins. I don't think DK's to the level of either of those guys yet. He'll probably be there soon. He has the potential to be at the minimum. But I'm excited to see Adams, who I think is the best receiver in the league right now. I think he proved it this year. 18 touchdowns, and he missed 2.5 games. That's ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers is going to win the MVP. I think that's a foregone conclusion as of right now. And the rest of the team is, they're starting to gel a lot better in LaFleur's second year. They had moments last year where, and even this year too, where they would go crazy in the first half and they'd score 3 times in a row, and then they just wouldn't do anything. And they had that a couple times this year even too. Against the Vikings, they lost. Against the Colts, second half, they couldn't really manufacture much. But the thing in those games was the offense for the other team was kind of beating up on our defense and having longer drives. While in this case, I'm not really that scared of Jared Goff, and I think Jair's going to do pretty solid on – I'd imagine he'd guard Woods. Kupp's more of a slot guy, and Jair plays on the outside. But
Kupp might not play.
Kupp
might not play.
Oh, he'll probably play, I thought, right? He was his participation's been limited, right?
Yeah, he didn't practice on Wednesday, so we'll see.
But the Packers can still – I think they'll be able to run the ball decently well. The biggest loss for them right now is Bakhtiari, and Billy Turner played left tackle last game against Mac, and he did just good enough to where Rodgers didn't get killed, but there was times where Rodgers bailed him out, right? Like whether it's just quick passes or that pass to MVS down the middle where they saw Trevathan pinching in and stuff like that, but that's not always going to be available. Like he's not always going to be able to bail you out like that. And right now our left guard is Lucas Patrick, and Aaron Donald's going to be lining up over him the whole game. So that's pretty scary. What?
He lines up on the other side.
Well,
Lucas Patrick will see Brockers.
I'd imagine Donald will go over who's ever the weakest link. I mean, he can play anywhere on the D line.
Right. True. My apologies. Go ahead.
It's all good. But I think that'll be the biggest thing is Aaron Donald going to be able to actually get blocked and double teamed efficiently? Because they do have Leonard Floyd, who for some reason, he was pretty underwhelming on the Bears, but he hates the he hates the Packers. He pops off against us. I feel like he gets a sack every time. And it's for no good reason. The dude will have 5 sacks in a year, and 3 of them are come against the Packers. So I don't know. He just hates the Packers with a burning passion. Always plays well against them. Brockers is good. They get good production from other guys on their D-line. They have really good safeties. John Johnson, Pro Bowl snub possibly. My thing with them is they just don't have that elite linebacker yet, and I think we'll be able to run due to that because when you look at their games they struggled to run. The Buccaneers that was the first thing, and they do have the best run defense. But one thing I think both of us saw is when they tried to go lateral and like beat him to the edge, Devin White and Levante David just blew Jones up in the backfield or for a minimal game. And the Rams do not have that just dynamic linebacker. So I think that'll be a huge thing in allowing us to run the ball. But I'm excited to see this game because on paper it should be a really, really close matchup.
Okay, so I think the point you made about the run game is fair. And wait, before I go again, who do you got winning this game? You got Green Bay? You sticking with your pick?
I got my Packers. Come on now. We got Aaron Rodgers.
You ever picked against your Packers?
I have. Last year.
I know you have.
Yeah, I have.
I know you have. But
not today.
I'm going with your Packers too. The one thing I will say about the run game is that I think the thing with the Rams is that they play a 3-4, right? And they play kind of a five-man front. It's called an eagle front. But what that does is their linemen who are so good at getting up the field, they dictate basically the gaps that the linebackers have to fit in and make tackles. So I don't think they really need special linebackers. They just need smart people who can diagnose where the D-line is going and find their gaps and fit them. So I think they can still do a good job in the run because of that. And I think the defensive line is the big deal. Like correct me if I'm wrong, but when Green Bay played Tampa, who's also a 3-4, Vita Vea played, right?
Yeah. I think he played most of it. I think he got injured that game, honestly.
Yeah, I think those big dudes really shut down the run because if you go Vita Vea, JPP, Shaq Barrett,
Buccaneers, like their run defense is just like leagues ahead of everybody else.
So yeah, you have those people, but I think ultimately, I think we can break down the Rams have the advantages here, and here. The Packers got I think he's back being the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he ever left. He was not as good as, but that's because he set such a high standard for himself, and he's playing in an offense that's really QB friendly with a play caller who's really killing it right now. And so I think the coach and play caller, I think ultimately LaFleur and Rodgers because of that. I mean, you're lucky. You have Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't matter. You have Aaron Rodgers.
It was tough with McCarthy the last few years and seeing them just running 4 verticals every time. As much as I love seeing Rodgers get out the pocket and throw a back shoulder to Jordy, you just can't play offense like that. And we can talk about the Seahawks another time, but just quickly, I think that's what the Seahawks' problem was this year is they just kept running 4 verticals and deep routes, and their O-line can't hold up and whatnot. But that's a moot point. But, yeah, end of line, I'm going Packers. This will be a really good match. I will say this will be a good matchup. Although it's 1 versus the 6 seed, the Rams showed out last week, and they've been playing a lot better in December. But the Packers also have too, so it'll be a good game.
It's a Super Bowl level defense. It's just can Jared Goff make the two plays that he's going to have to make in the game?
I wouldn't say this is a defense like those 2017 Jags, like those 2018 Bears. If they biggest problem,
I know what you're going to say, and I know why you're going to say it because we've had this conversation before. It's about their inability to score, right? They don't score as much as those teams.
Not necessarily that. I just think they don't force the same amount of turnovers that those teams did because those teams forced turnovers like it was nothing. I think it was either the Bears or the Jags. One of them had over 40 turnovers, it
was the Bears.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And the Rams don't have that. But, yeah, I mean, you saw them score last week, right? We could do this score prediction.
What you got?
I'm going Packers. I think they'll score 28, honestly. I think the Bills dropped over 30 and the Cardinals dropped over 30 on them. So I could see the Packers doing something similar. So I'm going to go 28, and I'm going 21 or 20 for the Rams.
You're going 28-21?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go 27-24 Packers.
Yeah, but I think we both think it'll be a close game just due to how the teams are formulated. And it'll be in the cold weather. And Rodgers can play in the cold. Can Jared Goff, though, with his finger? Can Wolford with the stinger he had? We'll see. Now, we can move on. We've been talking about this a long time. Next game, we're going to talk about is the Bills and the Ravens. So we already touched on this a little bit, so I doubt we'll go too in depth. But what are your thoughts on this one?
So as someone who doesn't want the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, it really upset me that the Pittsburgh Steelers won this game because I think Baltimore and Buffalo are the two teams that really got a puncher's shot against the Chiefs. And if that, because the Chiefs are so good. They're so good. And it upset me because I was hoping the Chiefs would have to play Baltimore, and then they would have to play Buffalo. But now I'm not sure Buffalo can get through Baltimore because it's a bad matchup. Buffalo has two problems. They can't really – we've stressed on it all year. They can't run the football, and they can't stop – they're not very fast on defense and can't stop the run. Now, I think they're going to have to do a better job stopping Lamar Jackson than they did Jonathan Taylor, and that's only because the Colts could throw a little bit. I think they have no faith in Hollywood Brown or Miles Boykin or Willie Snead beating Trey White and those guys on the outside. So they don't have to play their safeties deep, and they can play split safety closer to the line of scrimmage and maybe do a couple creative things with their fronts and hopefully can stop Lamar Jackson. And then the other thing is Baltimore's defense, though they had a really good game, Brandon Williams, Derek Wolfe, Calais Campbell, those guys against the run against Derrick Henry, they're not the best run defense. That's been their problem. But now they don't have to stop the run because the only run game the Bills have is Josh Allen running in the red zone. So that means that they can do all kinds of crazy things in blitz, and they have the type of corners that can match up with John Brown, Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, because Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith, and Marcus Peters, they're phenomenal. So I think ultimately, I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens in this game. I think it's going to be really close. I'm going to pick Baltimore 35-31.
Yeah, I'm interested to see their corners versus this receiving core because we've stressed it. We think this might be the best receiving core in the league when you just take receivers, maybe even with tight ends. I think the Chiefs are up there. We've mentioned the Panthers. There's others just off the top of my head, but I'm interested to see that because Jimmy Smith is finally healthy now, and they missed him, definitely. I mean, at his best, he's playing like a really good CB2, and they have three dudes that are really good. They have two dudes that are really good CB2s. One dude who's an elite CB1, Humphrey. So I'm interested to see that versus the Bills. What I think it comes down to is, can the Ravens offense actually pass the ball formidably? Because I think the Bills, if they need to, they can sell out to stop the run, right? They can go single safety high with Poyer, bring Micah high in the box, just have him spy Lamar if need be, and they can stop the run. But are they going to be able to get Andrews and Hollywood and whatever other receivers, Dez maybe? I don't know. That'd be cool. But can those guys actually create separation? Can they make that spark play so that the Ravens have a lead? Because if they have to, if they go down early, they're not going to be able to do what they did against the Titans. I just don't think they will. So they're going to have to get off to a lead or at least not go down like 10 to 14 points early on so they can run the ball with Dobbins and wear out the Bills deep.
Yeah, I agree. You got a score prediction?
Yeah, I think so. The spread right now is 2 points actually. So it's supposed to be really close. I got the Bills. I just think Josh Allen's going to be too much for them. I don't think Lamar's going to be able to pass the ball as well as he did against the Titans. We got to remember, this is a Titans defense that is not good. We've seen them allow 30 points to tons and tons of teams, and they're a lot worse than the Bills. And the Bills are not the best defense. They were a few years ago. They were up there. I'd say they're pretty average or middling right now, more close to top 10. But this Bills defense is way better than the Titans. So I got Bills 31-23.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think, just because I think the Ravens defense matches up, I'm with you. I don't think they're going to be able to really stop them. Josh Allen is way too good. Mm-hmm. I still think they're going to score 31. I can't trust their defense right now, man. I just can't trust it. But we'll see what happens because this is the game I'm most excited about looking at. I'm most excited about looking forward to.
And this was one of the reasons why I am is Diggs. I think Diggs is still going to do good. I think with the top receivers, there's only a couple guys, and I think Ramsey and Jair Alexander are two of them that can actually guard someone the whole game and not allow at least a few, 5 to 6 catches pretty consistently. So I think he'll have a good game. but I do want to. I'm going to watch that closely and see how Allen does, because I think we've mentioned it before, but the man's arm is probably top 2 in the NFL. Him and Mahomes probably the biggest right now, which is velocity, sheer arm power, and talent. So I think he'll be amazing. And Diggs, when he gets going, I mean, I think we all saw what he did this year. He was insane.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he's gonna get shut down. I think he's gonna have a good game, and I think the reason is because the Bills have a really good quarterback who's willing to throw him the ball when he's one-on-one on 50-50. So they're not gonna let Stephon Diggs get out of this game because Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters are being physical with him and taking him away. They're gonna make sure that they get Stephon Diggs his target. So I think no matter what, however good the coverage is, I think Stephon Diggs is still gonna have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it, man.
So we can get into the next game. This one's going to be really interesting. Really interesting. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to take it? And
yeah, I'll go first because I think this is going to be 3-0. Who dat's going to get it done? I think the New Orleans Saints ultimately. I love the way the Bucs are playing. I think the pass rush. I think their change in offensive philosophy, getting into tighter splits, making sure they're protecting Brady, and then letting him throw the ball from clean pockets has been phenomenal because Brady is still slinging it. He's got a gun. The only problem with Brady is he willing to take hits, and now they're not subjecting him to take hits. My big thing is that the Bucs defense, their pass rush is no longer getting home, and they've never had the secondary guys. The reason their defense was good in the beginning of the year was that their front seven could dominate, and they didn't have to blitz, so they could put everybody in coverage. Well, now they got a blitz, and Devin White had a ton of stats at the end of the season.
And that's about it.
Right, because they blitzed him a lot, and he's not the best in coverage, but he's good at blitzing. But when you're blitzing Devin White, you're sacrificing someone in coverage. I'm not the biggest Drew Brees guy at this point thinking he's playing great, but Drew Brees is still one of the smartest quarterbacks ever. He sees the blitz as well as anybody. He knows as well as anybody where to go with the ball in zone coverage. And I think if they look to blitz him and they do creative things, it doesn't matter. Brees is going to eat it up and know when to get the ball to Kamara. Can't guard Mike, look like can't guard Mike, Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders. And then I think that the Saints on defense still have the personnel to upset this Bucs.
They match up well.
Right. They have Marshawn Lattimore.
Stopper. They have They basically have Mike Evans. We'll see if he catches a pass. I think me and you have said it before, but if Marshawn Lattimore played Mike Evans every single week, he would be the best cornerback in the history of the game. He locked in the whole thing. They're always beefing. It's a really good rivalry between these two. And I think with Tom, it makes it more interesting. So you had your thing with the Saints. I'm sticking with my team at the beginning of the year that I liked. I was a big on the Tampa Bay hype train in the beginning. I liked their moves. And then getting AB in the middle of the season is starting to pay dividends. He's looking like he's back to being AB, which in my mind was probably the best receiver of the 2010s. I'm trying to think, like Randy didn't play too much in the 2010s, and there's other dudes, right? But like 2015 on, AB's been the best. I think he's been better than Julio, and that might be controversial, but you could argue it either way. Regardless, this offense, like you said, Bruce Arians' scheme is deep passes. They want to take a bunch of shots. And it's just not quarterback friendly. I think we've seen every single quarterback that's been in it have their most interceptions. You can remember Andrew Luck on the Colts, Carson Palmer on the Cardinals. Jameis Winston went 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. And Tom's had double-digit picks. And that's just the system, right? It's deep passes, take a lot of shots. That's not –
can't risk it, biscuit.
Yeah. I think that's such a dumb strategy, and it's been proven wrong by the Shanahans, the McVays, the LaFleurs. You don't have to do that. You can dink and dunk your way down. Brady's done it, and then go into play action. They still take some shots, right? Like we maybe have long touchdowns, but doing the short and intermediate passes first, and then building play action into that. I think that's what they've been doing more often, and that's why their offense is actually clicking. Now for this game, Mike Evans is not going to do well. I think that's a foregone conclusion with both me and you after seeing just how Marshawn Lattimore is just the anti, he's the kryptonite to Superman, and he's going to shut him down. But Godwin AB, I think, will do enough. Godwin did have a bad game last week, tons of drops. They could have dropped over 40 against a really good defense. I think they'll do well though, and I know they've gotten blown out twice against the Saints team. Like they got embarrassed on national television 2 times. But I think they're a little different now in the sense that they have gone to the more Tom Brady style of short and intermediate passes. They'll still go deep occasionally, so Bruce Arians is happy and he can risk it for the biscuit. They'll do some play action. And mainly because I just don't like Drew Brees in the playoffs. I think this has been documented over the last mainly 2 years. I give him an excuse for the Rams game because that game was a little fishy with the officiating at the end, but the last 2 years he really has not been that great. He's been pretty underwhelming against a good defense, so I'm not trusting him in the playoffs. It'll be an interesting game though.
Yeah, what's your score? I got Saints. I'm going to go Saints kind of big here. I'm going to go 35-24. I'm going to say the Saints win comfortably.
I'm going over 30 for the Buccaneers. I'm going to go 31, so 4 tutties and a field goal. I'm going to go 30 for the Saints. I think it'll be close, maybe a missed extra point, maybe a team settling in the red zone for some field goals. But I'm excited just to see Brees and Brady go again in the playoffs this time. So it's not the regular season where there's another week. Like it's do or die right now. Who's going to play out of their minds? Who's going to show up? Who's not? And I'm trusting Tom. I know he's burned me a couple times against the Saints already in other big games, but give me Tom when it matters most. Brees' arm's done.
All right. So, guys, we've kind of reached the end of our show here. The stuff we planned to cover today. Got any questions? I guess we can take them for like 10 minutes
like
here.
15 minutes. This went a little longer than we planned. We were hoping for an hour. We had a good question on running back philosophy, and we got deep into the Mac Jones conversation. But do send in questions.
Yeah, and thank you so much for just joining us all this time. We've had a pretty decent viewing today. We really appreciate it going later. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, please subscribe to our channel, like and share our content if you enjoy it. We appreciate every single one of you. And of course, if you're looking for a betting guide, Blake put out a betting video today in our channel. They usually do a pretty good job with their picks, though.
Last week was messed up, man. 2 bad beats. You can't make it.
They struggled last week, but I think they'll be better this week. Though it seems Blake is wrong. It seems Blake is wrong about the Tampa Bay New Orleans game, so that's already one loss there. And then again, if you're interested in our basketball content, Blake and our friend Nolan put out a video on the top 5 duos under 25. It's a pretty good list, though I don't agree with a couple of the rankings, but do check it out. The controversy creates conversation, and discourse is probably the best thing society has to offer. So if you guys got any questions, let's hear them.
And then I do have another little quick thing. So we've gotten emails from people, one person in particular saying, hey, like, could I come on the show? So we do have an email like that you guys can like send stuff to in the description of every video. Do people check it out? No, but do check it out because it's pretty interesting to like if you guys have comments you want to tell us or like you're big fans. We've had our new logo, someone designed that for us. We thought that was really cool. And other stuff like that. So do let us know if you want us to make certain videos or have certain comments to us. So there's that. And I guess we can start taking questions now.
Yeah, so the logo was designed by Thatcher Klum. He's this cool guy who I met on Twitter, and he said he would design the logo for us. Follow him on Twitter at Thatcher_Klum. He's a Niners fan, super cool guy. Does great work with graphic design. I think our new video is awesome. And then going off of what Blake said with the email, it was we will probably do a show like what Grant does, maybe hopefully one day, where we can just come in here and hopefully we can take a few people to we'll put the StreamYard link out there and you guys can just join us for a little while and we can talk sports, we can talk life, we can talk all kinds of things. So let's get into the questions and then call it a show. Thank you so much for joining us. So Jamal, you're our guy. Where are we based out of? We're actually both in around Chicago, in Naperville, Illinois, which is basically Central Standard Time. So we're not in either the East Coast or the West Coast. Super Bowl matchup, Blake, what you got?
So I actually did a bracket for this, and I had Chiefs Packers, pretty conservative, but The more I think about it, the more I'm honestly kind of leaning Bills, and it's mainly just due to Josh Allen and Diggs, and that offense is just kind of unstoppable. You could argue they should have lost to the Colts last week, but I think they're honestly their worst matchup. I think against the Ravens it'll be good, but I'm trusting Allen. And against the Chiefs, that's the one where it's kind of tough for me. I don't know. I've been a big Mahomes guy because I think as much as the media loves him, I think people our age and like the fans that are invested in NFL are starting to dislike him just because of how much the media loves him, and they're starting to disrespect him too much. So I'm going Chiefs and Packers. I'd be surprised if that's what it was. There's just so much that could happen for both teams, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Who do you have, Vish?
So this is such an imperfect science. So I know I picked the Baltimore Ravens to knock out the Buffalo Bills earlier in this show, but I'm gonna pick with my heart and just tell you the matchup I want to see. And the matchup I want to see is the Green Bay Packers versus the Buffalo Bills. Those are two teams I would like to win the Super Bowl, especially the Buffalo Bills. I really like Josh Allen. I think Bills fans deserve it, so that's what I want to see. No, I wouldn't trade Nick Bosa for Deshaun Watson. I understand the premium on quarterback to edge rusher. Blake, before you take this real quick, but I think it's a bad business precedent if you start trading players that you draft and you perform. The idea of the NFL is that you draft a guy, he plays really well in his rookie contract, you give him a second contract. Niners already set kind of a weird precedent when they traded DeForest Buckner. The only excuse you can make is that this regime didn't draft DeForest Buckner. But when you're talking George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, the draft picks that this regime has hit on, they got to get through them and get them the second contract. So, no, I would not include Nick Bosa in a trade for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think for the Niners, my thing is I'm usually very against trading tons of picks to get one guy because it's the NFL and it's the ultimate team sport. I think some of these teams surprisingly do have the assets and cap space where it makes sense for them. Those teams being the Colts, Jets, Jaguars, and Dolphins. Besides those four teams, I'm really not thinking about trading for Watson just because of how crippling it is. And I brought up the Bears situation before and what that did with them because signing Mac and how they peaked the year they had him, and then ever since, like you've seen, they have not really been getting much more talent because they haven't had first-round picks. So I'm against it, especially with Bosa. Like the dude's on a rookie contract. He's shown he can be a Pro Bowl level player, if not higher. The dude's scary to go against. I'm not doing that, no.
Right. It just for the record, Nick Bosa was the best football player in the Super Bowl in a game that featured Mitchell Schwartz, Patrick Mahomes, George Kittle, Chris Jones. The best football player on that field, the guy who dominated for all 60 minutes of that game was Nick Bosa. Why would you trade him? He's 22 years old. He's such a hard worker. He's special. I think too many people forget just because he got injured. So this is a good question because I think both of our opinions of them have evolved through the season, as is everybody. But Blake, what are your opinions of Baker Mayfield and the Browns?
Yeah, so middle of the season, I actually didn't think they were all that good just because they'd beaten the bad teams and gotten destroyed by the good ones. But in middle of the season, Baker just started playing out of his mind, and I think it's a combination of getting Wyatt Teller and Chubb back. So Wyatt Teller this year, me and Vish have said it before, but he's probably been the best offensive guard in the whole league. And Chubb you might be my fifth best running back in the whole league. We might have a ranking video for that coming out soon. Look for that. But I think Chubb's special, and as good as Hunt is, having both of them is it's a cheat code, to be quite honest with you. And Stefanski's done such a great job. My thing with Mayfield is that we talked about it a little bit earlier. I like him as a guy who's on a rookie contract who you can just build around because he has the arm that can make the throws. He's gotten a lot better as a decision maker. But as my thing is he's like an insanely good game manager, but the moment the team starts losing those Wyatt Tellers, they lose the Kareem Hunts and the other pieces like that, he won't nearly be as good, and he won't get paid like top dollar money is my thing. So that's my take on it. I hope I'm wrong because, like, honestly, if you're a Browns fan, this is awesome right now. They
you deserve it.
They whooped their rival, who's for the last 20 years been your father, pretty much. This is awesome for you guys. So congrats that. But yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, so I think the term game manager, when you throw it out, it feels like you're insulting the guy. I don't think you're insulting him. And so I won't even use the word game manager. What I think of the Browns is I think they're a good football team that's well coached with a ton of talent. They have a great offensive line, a pretty good defensive line with a stellar defensive player in Myles Garrett, a secondary with a very good corner in Denzel Ward, a pretty good safety in Ronnie Harrison, but overall underwhelming, and wide receivers who without Odell Beckham, who I think are mostly underwhelming. Like, I'm not a big Jarvis Landry guy. I think they win with their run game and their offensive scheme. What I think of Baker Mayfield is I think he's pretty good. I think he's one of the 14 to 18 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he
Exactly.
makes a lot of big time throws, but I think from a decision-making standpoint, I think this offense really helps him with a lot of
Yeah.
bootlegs, a lot of play action, a lot of very clear and defined reads where he doesn't have to process or stand in the pocket at 6 feet and throw the ball 45 times. So I don't think he's the kind of guy where 16 games a season, you can drop him back 40 times the way the Bills dropped back Josh Allen this season, and he makes throw after throw and wins you 11 games. But I think that you can win a Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. It just would have to be in the Jimmy G Goff type thing where you need an
Yeah.
excellent team around them and you have a good offensive scheme. And, frankly, I think he makes more big time throws than both Jimmy G and Goff.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's like there's average, right? There's like bang of the buck average. For me, that's Teddy Bridgewater. Like, I think he's just the perfect example. Like, in the middle of this dude's not really going to lose you games, but he's not going to go on a game-winning drive and just like you're like, wow, that man's got potential. So I think he's above like that very definition of average, but he's not so far above it where like you can say drop back 50 times like the Allens, like the Rodgers, like the Mahomes, and win me a game. He needs the right structure around him. I think we're both on
Right.
track with that.
Yeah. Our Jamal asks if Breeze. So I'll take this one first. I think Breeze will retire this year, and I don't think they have the option of drafting a quarterback. My guy right here, this is Thatcher Klum. He's the guy who made our logo. Thank you, Thatcher. Follow him on Twitter. Awesome guy. But he points out that they're going to be $98 million over cap space. So there's going to be a lot of really good players that the New Orleans Saints are going to let go this offseason because of cap casualties. They paid Taysom Hill $16 million, and Tom Payton's totally enamored with him. They didn't expose Jameis Winston this year, so I think they have an opportunity to bring him back for fairly cheap.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to kind of be the first team to try out this 2-quarterback system between Jameis and Taysom and see how that goes. I'm super intrigued how that goes, but I think that's what their quarterback setup will be next year.
I'm with you. So I think Breeze has stated he's going to retire, and this is last year. They don't really have the money to keep him. Thanks for pointing that out, Thatcher. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we both thought this, that when Breeze went down, like Jameis is the guy, right? And they brought in Taysom Hill, and like Sean Payton just has this like crush on him for some reason. Maybe it's because he can do a whole bunch of things, but he absolutely just adores Taysom Hill. I don't know why. I'm not the biggest fan of him as like going to the trenches with him as my quarterback. Like, I would be kind of pissed if that was me, but yeah, I think they'll go Taysom Hill because they're paying him. And yeah, they can get Jameis for cheap. Like, he only really came in when they were beating the Niners, and all he was doing was just throwing dump offs to Kamara. Like, they didn't really get him involved in the offense, right? So if they can get him back for cheap, they'll do that. And yeah, they'll probably try out the 2-quarterback thing. They have an interesting offseason ahead. I think Janoris Jenkins will be a cut. There's a ton of other dudes that are just gone. And I don't know if we've stated this much, but cap is very easy. It's just numbers, right? And these GMs, like, they're getting paid lots of money, and they will find a way to get below it. Whether that's creating some of their salary into a signing bonus where you can spread it out over years. I mean, that's what they've been doing, and that's how they're in this situation. So they'll figure it out, is my end of the story for that.
Yeah, ultimately, I agree.
And I just did want to touch on this.
Oh, my bad. I missed this.
So Nick Nassos, great question. Is Luka Garza up next? And by the way, Nick is on the betting videos. I've said it multiple times. Do check those out. We'll do good this week. I'm excited to see how they're running the tourney. He will not do anything in the NBA. That's a matter of the fact. But yeah, in the tourney, I was going to be exciting to watch. If you don't know much about them. It's basically their offense is Luka Garza and then 4 shooters on the outside. And yeah, that's pretty much what they do. He's been dominant, probably win the Wooden Award. He goes to the same college as me, Iowa. So it's cool seeing our team actually be like really good for basketball. I'm excited to see them in March. Any thoughts, Vish?
Yeah, I don't think he's up next. That's all I'm going to say. And so, guys, we've reached an hour and 34 minutes. So I'm gonna take this as our last question, just because it's a topic we touched on earlier, and I think it's a great question. So, Blake, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go first on this because this is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I think Baker Mayfield's contract is going to be the decision on how the league's outlook on quarterbacks change. Because I think COVID has kind of created a situation where teams are starting to realize with the cap, we can't be paying these average quarterbacks $30 million, $35 million, top of the market money, and then hoping 3 years into the contract, they're all of a sudden the 15th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and you can continue to build a team around him that way. I think that was what the Eagles felt with Carson Wentz, but Carson Wentz was better. I think he was like probably a top 10 quarterback at the time they paid him, or somewhere around there. He had moments of showing it, and that's how the Rams, I think, felt about Jared Goff. But COVID and the cap going down so much has totally changed that. And I think the landscape of the league should be, because they have it with every position, that quarterbacks shouldn't be overpaid an X percentage of the cap unless they truly deserve it. Like the top of the line guys, which to me, only 5 players in the NFL, without a doubt, I would pay whatever money they want. And that's Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, obviously Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson. Those 5 guys, from marketability, sustainability, size, arm talent, everything. I think those 5 guys, if they want $40 million, pay it. Everybody else falls kind of in between. Pay him like a backup Case Keenum $10 million and pay him like a superstar Deshaun Watson $40 million. Right, you got to fit them somewhere in. And I think the Baker Mayfield deal makes that decision, because to me, Baker Mayfield, like I said, is 14 to 18, really good player within their system when they have the right pieces around him. So I think if the Browns make the right decision with Baker Mayfield and don't pay him top of the market $40 million and instead pay him somewhere like $25 million, like what Tom Brady made this year, I think 1, the Browns will have sustained success with Baker Mayfield. 2, I think Baker Mayfield himself will have sustained success. And 3, I think it'll totally reset the market on how quarterbacks are looked at, because I think Baker Mayfield would then set the example for what guys closer to his skill level would get paid. And then, of course, when Justin Herbert gets up, he would get paid the $40 million. But when maybe a guy like Tua, if he plays 5 years and he plays similarly to how he played as a rookie, but with improvement, he would get paid closer to what Baker gets paid, though I think Baker's more gifted than Tua.
Yeah, I'm with you. And that's the thing with COVID too, is the salary goes down. So teams are kind of really having to make these tough decisions on salary cuts and like penny pinching to make sure like they're actually getting the most value out of their players. Like they can't just keep spending more than what they're actually worth because they know the cap's going to go up and it's going to be good in a few years. Like they can't do that this upcoming year. And with Goff and Wentz getting paid what they did, which was as much as the Wilsons and Rodgers of the league, right? They're simply not that good, and it's kind of crippling to a team. I mentioned it previously. Like the teams that pay the quarterback the most, like those teams rarely win the championship, because although they are really good, it's just hard. You got to pay 52 other dudes. So it's hard when one dude's getting like 20% of the cap, and it just hinders the roster around them. There are a few exceptions to that, as you said. So if I had to guess how much he'll get paid, I'd say it's like 28 to 30 million. And I'd say that's maybe even more, or that's probably more than he'll actually get paid. But the way I view it is they're competing with what someone's going to pay on the open market. And when the Jets have money to just throw at him, like he's going to go for more than what he's actually worth. That's just how free agency works.
Yeah.
So I'm going 20 to 30 million on him.
Right. And then ultimately that gets to the progressive question, right, of Grant's idea and just an outlook where if he's playing hardball with that, do you just use him up to 5 years and say just walk and we can draft another guy? Because Baker Mayfield is good, but you can draft a guy in the first round the way quarterbacks are coming out now and put him in that system and say, hey, run play action, run bootlegs with this run game, and he could put up similar production to Baker Mayfield. I'm not saying it's Mac Jones, but I'm saying like if Joe Burrow was on, if rookie Joe Burrow, no injury, was on the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, Baker Mayfield has a more powerful arm, but Joe Burrow's processing is so much faster. He's a much better mover. He's more athletic. I think he would even put up better numbers than what Baker Mayfield did this year. So it's not a knock against Baker Mayfield, who I think is actually underrated at this point. I think he makes enough throws where he's a 14 to 18 guy. He's a really good player, but I think it's more a testament to how overpaid quarterbacks have been in this league. And if it does get to that point, it'll be interesting, because if they let him walk, I think it'll totally change the landscape of the league if he's playing hardball.
Yeah. And I think one more thing on that is, this is what we're saying. I'm just going to try to dumb it down, but I would we would rather pay someone $5 million, like a rookie contract, to be 80% of the production of a Baker who's getting $28 million, because you need value in your team, right? And a quarterback who's putting up 80 to 75% of the production of the dude that's getting paid 5 times more of him is so valuable. And that's how the NFL has been for the last few years, where these teams, they'll draft a guy and they'll perform really well in their rookie contract, like the Mahomes and the Lamars, and they'll have really good records because you're getting elite production for a fraction of the cost
with a stacked roster. And just to further say, because he nailed it right, because I wouldn't say like that the rookie is going to come in. Let's continue with Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to say that the rookie is going to come in and be better than Baker Mayfield. I'm saying if he's 80% of Baker Mayfield with that offense and that team, you could still probably win with him.
And then maybe more money to put elsewhere too. You can build up your secondary, you build up your linebackers, all these other positions.
But if you're getting 100% Baker Mayfield at 5 times the cost, it's simple. It's not proportionate. So that's it's an analytical way to look at the NFL. I think it's a Moneyball outlook on quarterbacks. It'll be interesting, because that's, to me, that's the biggest kind of league changing type decision that's coming up. And I think he's worth a second contract. I think he's definitely proven that. It's just that the Browns have to, if the Browns give him the same second contract that Josh Allen and Lamar get, I mean, God bless them.
And I do want to say, too, it's not that it's easy to find the guy that's 75 to 80%, because for every Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, there's Darnold, there's Rosen, there's Geno Smith, E.J. Manuel, Cardale Jones. Not that he was a high pick, but he was supposed to be, right? There's the guys that just, you get them in the first round, and they just flat out are not good. Like, they have the potential and the physical attributes, but they can't get that production. They're more of like 15 to 20%. And that's when your team's screwed, because you got to cut ties with this dude. And now you have a roster that's going to be aging and they're expensive. So do you want to go with a more sure thing at quarterback or get a veteran? So that's where it gets kind of sticky, is when you do draft a guy and they're only 25% of the production as opposed to 75 or 80%.
Yeah. So, you got any more thoughts on this?
No, I think, we've covered a lot. It's been, we planned on having a shorter stream today, but we had good questions, so it kind of kept us going long.
Yeah, so hour 42 minutes. I think we'll end it here. Thank you so much for joining us and sticking with us through the entire thing. As always, we really appreciate your support.
I do have one more thing. This is just false. For those of you that don't watch college basketball, just don't listen to him. Luka Garza, he's going to dominate in March. You can take that to the bank. Sorry to cut you off, but go on.
This man really wants to tell me that Luka Garza isn't overrated. I'm with Nick Nassos, but that's a topic for another day. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you guys. Again, we're really happy that you guys are able to support us like this. It's really nice of you guys. Please do check out, again, we'll post a few of these clips on our channel. If you can, please do like, subscribe, share if you enjoy it. We appreciate your support. I'll tweet out when we're going live next time. We hope to have more of you join us. We'll probably get Grant on soon. I know a lot of you guys found us through Grant, so we'll definitely get him on, and maybe we'll talk something a little different, maybe non-Niners with Grant.
We can get other, Vish has other guys in the Niners spectrum that he talks to, so maybe they'll come on. We got some exciting stuff.
For sure. And maybe a guest who you guys have seen in the chat, maybe joining us on here
Ooh,
soon. Maybe
yeah.
we'll do the call-in. So there's a lot coming. Please do check it out when it does come out. Thank you so much.